Mercer had arrived in New York 2 years before his marriage by an extraordinary route. He'd stowed away on a steamer that traveled America's eastern seaboard. The city that greeted him was humming to the sound of jazz and the fabulous Broadway musicals of his heroes, George Gershwin, Cole Porter, and Irving Berlin. He got a day job at a brokerage house, took bit parts acting, and began to work his way into the publishing and songwriting business.
I entered a singing talent competition sponsored by the band leader Paul Whiteman, and I won. The prize included a year's engagement with the band.
Paul Whiteman styled himself the king of jazz. Mercer became one of Whiteman's rhythm boys, following in the footsteps of Bing Crosby, who, coincidentally, had been a boyfriend of Ginger's. Crosby had already moved on to Hollywood.
Keep the disposition sweet. I want to see what makes me.
Up until that time, they had had strictly lyrical tenors, but Crosby was a casual singer. He sang words, and he breathed a lot in between phrases. Now, everybody copied him. I could illustrate, for instance, Paul Robeson would sing, "Old Man River."
That old man River, he must know something, but don't say nothing. He just keeps rolling. He keeps on rolling along.
Bing would sing it. Old Man River, that old man River, he don't say nothing, but he must know something.
'Cause it just keeps rolling, keeps on rolling along.
That was brand new in those days, to have a fella sing a song like that with a jazz band.
Singing with Whiteman gave Mercer an entree into the very heart of the New York music scene. George and Ira Gershwin and most of the other aristocrats of songwriting in the 30s, Irving Berlin, Rodgers and Hart, were actually from New York. There were two notable exceptions, Cole Porter and Hoagie Carmichael, who were both born in Indiana.
You all set, Slim?
Sure.
Maybe it happens this way. Maybe we really belong together, but after all, how little we know.
It's no coincidence that Mercer's first successful collaboration was with a fellow non-metropolitan.
He walked in one day, and I was sitting in the chair. The door was open, summertime, and he walked in, knocked. I said, "Come in." I said, "What's on your mind?" He said, "Well, I thought we might try to write a song." Well, got any idea? "Oh, yes, I thought I'd like to write a song called Lazy Bones. What do you think of that title?" I said, "Well, for this kind of a summer we're having here in New York, and what with the Depression and nobody working," I said, "it sounds mighty logical."
Lazy bones, sitting in the sun. How you expect to get your day's work done?
Never get your day's work done. Sleeping in the noonday sun.
Lazy bones, sleeping in the shade. How you expect to get your cornmeal made?
The last line of Lazy Bones knocked me out because I didn't think of it. Hoagie thought of it. I had Lazy Bones. How you going to make a dime that way? You're never going to make a dime that way. I probably said sleeping away, sleeping all the day away or something like that. And then he said, if he never heard a word I say, I thought, gee, that's sensational.
You just such a lazy bone. Yeah, and you never heard a word I say.
After he had Lazy Bones, he was in demand.
And one of the rewards that came from Lazy Bones was the offer to sing with the Paul Whiteman Orchestra on a regular basis.
Mr. Teagarden, you sure look cute. You must have on your traveling suit. It looks as if you really gonna go somewhere.
I listened to the radio a lot. Well, we all did in the 30s. And one of the best was always the Paul Whiteman, because there were so many good people with him. And Johnny was adorable, and he would do duets with Teagarden.
Can't you hear the organ playing? Can't you hear the folks a-praying?
There's a voice within me saying, "Ease off, brother. Fare thee well to Harlem. All this sin is righteous."
I think that jazz and a feeling for jazz and a love for jazz inflected everything he did, absolutely everything.
Johnny, he's always been someone that jazz musicians admire for a lot of reasons, I think. The way he sang sounded to me a bit influenced by Jack Teagarden, say, who was a jazzman if ever there was one.
Mr. Teagarden, you sure play Big D.
Did your association with jazz musicians have an influence, do you think, on your songs later?
Oh, yes. I think it had a great influence on my success, too. I think they helped me. They taught me the way around town. They gave me tunes to write. Some of my big songs are with jazz musicians. Laura's with Dave Raxon. Early Autumn is with Ralph Burns. Mm-hmm. And Hoagie was a jazz musician. Yeah. And anytime they had a tune that was kind of free, they'd call on me to write it, and I would write it. I wrote a few songs during the time I was singing with Whiteman. After a couple of years, I got an offer to come to Hollywood to act, write, and sing for a little B picture, an E-flat picture.
Marion sure has got him on the run, but it ain't gonna last.
Neither will automobiles. Horses are a cinch to come back.
Maybe we'll have a campus wedding this term.
I'll bet $5 that before the year's over, Johnny will present Marion with a choice bit of air.
After I did my picture, I think they decided I was a better writer than anything else. So I kept on writing, but I stayed out there, and I never went back to the band.
In Hollywood, Mercer joined a new elite. Musicals were the #1 box office attraction. The more lavish, the better. One great song could fuel a film and drive the box office. It was common to put out a key song first, so that the film would be released to ride on its success. Songwriters were as hot as the stars themselves.
Fred Astaire wrote this. I was at RKO on my first job out here, and he was on one of his first jobs out here. He was fooling at the piano one day on the set. Nobody was around. You heard him earlier. He'd rather write songs than dance.
Here's the song they wrote together.
I'm building up to an awful letdown. Castles in the air, my smile so debonair, my one big love affair. Is it just a flash? Will it all go smash like the 1929 market crash?
The other big songwriters in Hollywood, besides the house teams at the studios, were the people that Hollywood brought in. They imported Irving Berlin. They imported George and Ira Gershwin. They imported Rodgers and Hart from Broadway. They had a pedigree. Johnny didn't have a pedigree when he arrived in Hollywood. He was working for Paul Whiteman. He'd been a singer.
The songs he wrote for those pictures weren't great, but they weren't bad either. I mean, he wrote If You Were Mine with Matty Melnick, and Billie Holiday recorded that. But the pictures bombed, and they never picked up his contract.
The next Hollywood star Mercer wrote for was Bing Crosby. They'd both been in Whiteman's band, but at different times. They'd never met till then.
And I met Bing because we had both worked with Whiteman, had a mutual friend, and he was very nice.
Crosby's encouragement led to a huge hit for both of them. Cowboys and cowboy songs were all the rage in Hollywood in the 30s. The craze was ripe for Mercer's satirical touch. From the way Crosby performed it, he seems to have captured the tone that Mercer intended.
I'm just an old cowhand down from the Rio Grande, and I can of her just to beat the band. Now I'm a pie on ear who began from scratch. I don't bat an eye in a shooting match. I'll be foreman soon if my plans all hatch. Oh, yippee-yi-yo-ki-yay, yippee-yi-yo-ki-yay.
He put the song in the picture and he made some records with me, and he really got me started.
Hooray for Hollywood, that's gooey bally-hooly Hollywood, where any office boy or young mechanic can be a panic with just a good-looking pan. And any shop girl can be a top.
Then they asked him which of the Warner composers he would like to write with, and he selected Richard Whiting, because he'd idolized Whiting for many years.
Hooray for Hollywood is amusingly a cynical song. There are no illusions in it about going to Hollywood and living happily ever after. It's about going to Hollywood and seeing the tinsel. It's about the absurdity of it in a completely cheerful and sweet way.
Hooray for Hollywood, that woolly white and woolly Hollywood.
They hire cowboys.
I don't think he or Richard Whiting could ever have envisioned that this song that they rattled off for a fairly minor Warner Brothers musical would become an anthem for Hollywood that would take its place alongside There's No Business Like Show Business.
There's no business like show business, like no business I know.
And that's entertainment as go-to themes whenever you want to evoke the spirit of show business, in this case, Hollywood.
That's entertainment.
Go out and try your luck, you may be Donald Duck. Hooray for Hollywood.
Hooray for Hollywood.
Creating songs like Hooray for Hollywood and You Must Have Been a Beautiful Baby and all these other songs from the Warner Brothers musicals established him pretty quickly. So he was a star in his field, I think, before anybody realized just who he was.
Almost 20 years Mercer's senior, Richard Whiting was a veteran of Hollywood and Broadway with numerous film scores and hits to his name. He wrote The Good Ship Lollipop for Shirley Temple. He and Mercer had a very happy collaboration. They wrote 3 musicals together, but during the making of a 4th, Cowboy from Brooklyn, Whiting had a sudden heart attack and died.
Best company, so if you want to be a cowboy, then you gotta ride tenderfoot ride.
Following Whiting's untimely death, Warner Brothers teamed Mercer with another of their star composers to finish the film, Harry Warren.
And get to Texas with the morning mail.
In his day, Harry Warren was a sensational writer, and he's what we call a writer's writer.
When you sat in a room with him, he never talked. He just sat there while you played the melody. And he got used to the melody, and you'd say to yourself, I wonder what he's doing. He hasn't come up with anything. He hasn't said a word. Later on, he'd scribble something down on paper and hand to you and say, here's the lyric. And he had already finished it, which was quite unusual.
I didn't study any of them. I just tried to tune in on them. I didn't want to annoy anybody like Hoagie or Jerome Kern, or especially an older writer. So I just was very quiet and found out what they liked and what they didn't like a small boy at a party. I just was on my best behavior. And tried to write all the tunes that they gave me.